fund. See that cash position is an improvement from when I last reported out to you, which was as of the end of December, where we were in a negative cash position because that was before we received our first installment of property taxes for the fiscal year. And so since that time, we've received that first property tax installment, and then we have also received revenue and payments related to the Intergovernmental Transfer Program, or IGT, and we have received the proceeds of lease financing. So all of those things contributed to moving us into a positive cash position. And then the last of those two, the IGT and the lease financing, have really resulted in us having a more positive cash position this fiscal year compared to last fiscal year, due to the timing of last fiscal year's IGT and the fact that we did not receive as much in financing proceeds last fiscal year. Turning to look at the general fund reserves. So this is a little bit different because we are just focusing on the general fund here, and we're not actually looking at cash, but we're looking at the reserves, which are calculated as the beginning unrestricted reserves. We're adding the revenues that we've recognized so far this year, and then we're subtracting the expenses that we've recognized so far this year. The red line on the chart is last fiscal year, 15-16, and the blue line is this current fiscal year, 16-17. You can see that as of the end of February, reserves are also in a positive position. So we actually recognized those property tax revenues in December because that's when they were earned. We didn't get the cash until January, but you see the chart, the uptick in this chart happens in December, and that's consistent year to year. You can see that our reserves as of the end of February are performing slightly ahead of last fiscal year, and that's partially due to the timing of the IGT payment that I mentioned earlier. The yellow dashed line on the chart represents where we expect our reserve balance to be at the end of the fiscal year based on the mid-year budget that was adopted last month. So you can see if you look at the table, the very last row of that table shows a projected balance as of June 30th, 2017 of about $21.4 million, which represents 11.7% of our net budgeted expenditures. So turning to look at revenues, and this specific category of revenue is our medic cost recovery revenues. You'll probably remember from previous financial reports as well as discussion during the mid-year budget that this is a category of revenues where we're not performing as we had initially expected at the beginning of the year. Our actual revenues through February are just over $20 million. If you look at that red line, which is representing this fiscal year to date, and compare it to the blue line, which is our budgeted number, we're about $2 million lower than where we would expect to be based on budget. I will say that we've seen an improvement in that revenue category since the period for which we're reporting here. So in March and so far in April, we have seen some improvement. If we look at numbers through the end of March, that $2 million gap is close to about $1 million gap compared to where we would expect to be. I think we also do expect that there will be continued improvement in this category of revenues through the end of the fiscal year compared to the beginning of the fiscal year because we have additional units in the system for which we're billing compared to where we were at the beginning of the fiscal year. So our budget for this revenue category is about $33.4 million, and the expectation is that we'll see improvement through the remainder of the fiscal year that will help close the gap between where we're performing on an actual basis and the budgeted number. Looking at our total revenues, again, the red line representing actual results for the year, you can see that we're tracking pretty close to the budgeted number, which is that blue line. So the difference between the two is really accounted for by the medic cost recovery revenues being under budget, but other revenue categories really are tracking on budget. Turning to look at our expenses, this chart is showing salaries and benefits expenses. Through the end of February, we had spent about $102 million on salaries and benefits. That's really right on track with where we expected to be based on our budget, and then we expect to end the year with total labor expenses of about $157 million. And then looking at our total expenditures, you can see that we're tracking here just slightly below budget, and that's really due to the timing of non-labor expenditures. So we're in total at about $122.9 million and expect to end the year at about $188.9 million. The final chart that we look at is the CERP fund, which is our OPEB or Retiree Medical Trust Fund. This is a fund that is not held by the district. It's a trust, and the money in that fund can only be used to pay for retiree medical premiums. The balance as of the end of February was about $24.7 million, and you can see that that's made up out of contributions from inception to date of just over $22 million and investment earnings of about $2.5 million. So that green piece of the chart is showing you how much of the total balance is made up from investment earnings. So just to summarize the report for the first 8 months of the fiscal year, our total revenues are generally right on track with budget. We are seeing medic cost recovery revenues that trending below projections for the first 8 months of the year, but we do expect to see an improvement in the remainder of the fiscal year. Our expenditures are trending slightly below budget. That's primarily due to the timing of non-labor expenditures, and I think we would expect to see that as those expenditures kind of pick up towards the end of the fiscal year, that will even out towards our budget number. And then finally, we at this point in the year have both positive reserves and a positive cash balance due to the receipt of our property taxes and intergovernmental transfer revenue. That concludes my presentation, but I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the group?
No questions.
OPEB funding
Sure.
for just a moment. Looking at this, would this tell you that we are doing a great job, that we're doing an average job, or what are the implications of this?
So I think what this is showing you is that starting sort of towards the end of 2013 there, where you actually see the blue part of the chart start to pick up, is that we're making contributions to address the unfunded OPEB liability. And the way that those contributions are calculated, you sort of think of it like a mortgage payment. So we have this unfunded liability that gets amortized, and we make payments on it every year. And that's how our ARC, our annual required contribution, is calculated. So we are making those payments as they're calculated.
Right.
So I think we are doing a good job because we're sort of addressing this in an actuarially sound way. The green part of the chart really is outside of our control. There are certain assumptions made about what the investment earnings will be, and obviously actual experience is going to differ from those assumptions, but to the extent that that's positive, that's good news, right? Because that's more money that is available for the funding of the benefit. But I think what we should focus on is the part that we can control, which is the blue part of the chart, that we're making those contributions on an annual basis.
Fine, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, presentation item only, takes no action.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, discuss our next meeting date. Has everybody agreed to the 24th as a meeting date, 4 p.m.?
Yes.
All right, then. Looks like there's no problem there. And then we will have an anticipated action and presentation item. It'll be the fiscal year 17-18 preliminary budget. Any comments or questions by board members or committee members? No? Seeing none, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.